Discover how a lonely CEO transformed his life after finding a shivering nurse and her baby. Jack Thompson navigated the bustling streets of Chicago that night, the cold wind slicing through his tailored suit. Comfort and isolation had become familiar companions, intertwining in his life like a poorly stitched fabric. As CEO of a promising tech startup, he had conquered boardrooms and secured investments. Yet each evening, the silence of his penthouse loomed larger than the skyscraper that housed his ambition. The accolades, once the lifeblood of his existence, now felt like disillusioning reminders of his solitude. On this particularly frigid evening, he spotted a figure huddled next to the entrance of a hospital, a stark contrast against the backdrop of the city's glimmer. A young nurse, Sarah, wrapped in a thin shawl, cradled her newborn baby, her anxious eyes reflecting a desperation that jolted something deep within him. He approached, instinct pulling at him, as she spoke of being turned away, her meager paycheck dissipating into rent while her baby shivered. The scenes of his sterile office floors of glass and steel suddenly felt far removed from the raw vulnerability of her reality. Here, he blurted, handing her his warm coat. The action felt absurd, almost trivial, as if a piece of fabric could bridge the chasm of her desperation. Sharing sandwiches, meant for a solitary dinner, he listened to her stories that drew back the curtain on a healthcare system riddled with neglect. Each revelation from Sarah resonated painfully, mirroring his own frustrations within a world governed by profit margins. This wasn't just a professional conversation. It was a reminder that even in success, profound disconnection could linger. Jack found himself mentored by Sarah's tenacity. He wanted to help her soar, aligning her ambitions with the experience he had gained navigating corporate landscapes. Yet, just as this newfound purpose reinvigorated him, the shadows of his company loomed. An unexpected scandal erupted, his loyal comrades turning against him like wolves circling a wounded deer. Behind every betrayal lay familiar faces, colleagues whose loyalty had made the ascent bearable. Yet here he stood, blending doubt and fear into an undeniable tension, caught in a vice between the need for self-preservation and the desire to stand for what was right. He grappled with his moral dilemma. Each night grew heavier. Should he confront the injustice, or preserve his carefully sculpted empire at the cost of his integrity? Questions spiraled in his mind, a cyclone of dread and desperation gnawing at him. A sinking realization gripped him. By reaching out to Sarah, he had stepped irrevocably into the world of human frailty, and it terrified him. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Standing across a table cluttered with paperwork and unmade decisions, Jack faced Sarah again, her aspirations glimmering with the optimism he once possessed. But as their conversation flickered between personal growth and corporate chaos, he felt an unseen weight press against his chest, a disease of indecision. Each heartbeat throbbed with the magnitude of his possible failure. If he chose one path over another, what remnants of his identity would remain? What would be lost in the pursuit of truth? The walls of his penthouse echoed with unresolved tension, the nightlife bustling below oblivious to the storm brewing within him. Every second felt like an insurmountable challenge, every choice a potential irrevocable line in the sand. Jack stood on the brink of despair, a choice lingering on the horizon. Would he surrender to the suffocating grasp of comfort and isolation, or would he fight the rising tide of injustice that threatened to engulf both their lives? As dawn broke and the city stirred back to life, Jack wrestled with a personal reckoning. The soft light filtering through his penthouse windows felt both illuminating and accusatory, a reminder that time was slipping through his fingers like sand. He needed to decide, yet the more he deliberated, the more the weight of the moment intensified. Standing tall in the reflection of the glass, he barely recognized the man staring back, a standout in boardrooms yet lost amidst ethical turmoil, driven by a mix of fear and inspiration. Jack paused before the ledger of possibilities sprawled before him. He flicked through the pages of his company, decisions made not just for profit but to build a legacy, a life that mattered. Each signature bore witness to a man who once dreamed not only of innovation but of changing lives. It was this vision that drew him towards Sarah, and yet here he stood, in crisis. Determined to reclaim his voice, he grabbed his phone and dialed Sarah, words rehearsed in his mind. "Let us meet. I want to help." His resolve, shaky yet fierce, ignited a flicker of hope. However, as he ended the call, gnawing doubt seeped into his consciousness. Would his involvement with Sarah result in damaging repercussions? Would revealing corporate misdeeds spell disaster, or ignite a path to reform? The hour dragged on, a tightrope walk strung high above uncertainty. As he prepared for his meeting with Sarah, Jack scrutinized his closet. The suits, usually a symbol of competence, now felt heavy and constraining. He opted for something simpler, more human: a blazer with a vivid blue shirt that disrupted the dull status quo. A reflection, he thought, of how he intended to embrace a new direction. Arriving at the cafe where they first met, Jack was surprised to find himself anxious. Sarah sat by the window, while outside, life flowed. Cabs honked, and pedestrians hurried by, unaware of the seismic shift occurring in the climate of corporate ethics. He took in her expression, a fusion of determination and uncertainty, mirroring his own. "Jack," she greeted, her voice cautious yet stirring determination within him. "Have you thought more about what we discussed?" "I have," Jack began, the truth spilling forward, cutting through his earlier hesitations. "What's happening at the hospital? It's awful. I want us to confront it together, to make a change." Her eyes widened, a glimmering light ignited in their depths, illuminating pathways he had not anticipated. "But will you have support? What about your company?" "At this point, it doesn't matter, Sarah. Integrity comes before profit. If the company falls apart because I stand for what's right, then perhaps it deserves to," he declared, feeling as though each word pulled him closer to a promise against complacency. The resolve strengthened further as they fleshed out plans, discussing potential allies, whistleblowing, and strategies for rallying their resources for change. In Sarah's passion, Jack saw a reflection of his own. It ignited something long dormant within him, blending the cold edges of corporate ambition with the vibrant pulse of human connection. Leaving the cafe, heart racing, he felt the contours of a new identity brewing. It wasn't just a matter of confronting corporate injustice. It was about rediscovering his own humanity, stripped of titles and accolades. There was strength in vulnerability. There was power in truth. But before he could dive headfirst into his mission, a text vibrated his pocket. The name flashing on the screen froze him. An old ally from the company. A voice from a past he thought he was ready to leave behind. "We need to talk. Things are about to change. Meet me tonight." As dread crept in, Jack confronted a new dilemma. Would he engage with the corporate machine one last time, risking everything he had begun to build with Sarah? The moment of truth had arrived, and he knew he stood on the precipice of a life-altering decision. The evening air vibrated with apprehension as Jack paced outside the office building, the setting sun casting elongated shadows that seemed to mock his indecision. The text had unsettled him. He had created a fragile bridge towards something meaningful, only to be confronted with the looming specter of his past. His heart raced, a battle between loyalty to old alliances and his commitment to a new cause. The lobby felt sterile, the scent of polished wood mingling with the cold metallic tang of ambition that lingered like an unwelcome guest. He ascended in the elevator, each floor a countdown to confrontation. As he arrived, he found Derek waiting, his former mentor and friend, a man entrenched in the corporation's ethos. Derek's polished persona balanced on the edge of expectation and coercion, a reminder of the values Jack had spent years navigating. "Jack," Derek greeted, leaning against a wall in casual authority. "You look different. Lighter, even." "Lighter?" Jack felt the weight of an impending choice closing in. "What's this about?" he asked, cutting to the chase. He didn't need pleasantries. Every second felt precious. "There's been chatter about a merger," Derek began. his tone coded in a mix of excitement and warning. The company needs someone who can bridge the old and the new. I thought of you, you know how to play the game. Jack's stomach twisted. Is that what you think this is about? Playing games? Think of the opportunities, Jack. Influence like you can only dream of if you leave Sarah and this crusade behind, Derek said. The familiarity of his old mentor's rhetoric stung, tempting Jack to retreat into the safety of complacency. You don't understand, Jack countered, a fresh determination fueling his pulse. This isn't just about influence anymore. It's about doing what's right, not just what's profitable. Derek regarded him, brows furrowed as if wrestling with his own beliefs. Is it? Or is it the easy way to justify choices that scare you? Jack's heart pounded in an uncomfortable rhythm. It was a question not just about strategy but self-awareness. Was he really changing or merely seeking refuge from risks that would force him to confront the dark corners of his past? What if it means losing everything I've built? Sometimes what we build is a cage and we must be willing to break it. Derek's words held a weight that lingered in the air, palpable as the dusk that settled around them. The vulnerability in his mentor's voice revealed cracks in the facade of corporate pride. I can't go back to turning a blind eye, Derek. No matter the price, Jack affirmed, a resolve bubbling to the surface. This was a man who could walk away. But could he truly give up everything he had spent years crafting? Yet, Derek's gaze shifted, the moment pregnant with tension. If you're serious about this, I'll have your back. But no, it comes at a cost. Loyalty isn't free. Caught between worlds, Jack weighed the implications. Derek's offer promised security, but felt suffocatingly familiar. To take up the mantle of power again, would he become a puppet once more, ensnared in a game he no longer believed in? Meet us tomorrow, you'll see. You could become one of the faces of change from the inside. Or I could become part of the machinery that fosters it. Jack's mind raced with the paradox. There was familiarity in fear, and he had danced along that edge for far too long. As he stepped back, uncertainty swirled. The decision was no longer merely about ethics. It reflected who he chose to be. Could he harness the very machine he sought to dismantle for a greater purpose? Jack left the building, the dark sky matching the turmoil within. But one thought propelled him forward. He needed to speak to Sarah, to confront the looming shadows of his decision. With his journey unfolding, doubt now mingled with yearning. What if the price of his allegiance led him to betray his own awakening? The night stretched ahead like an unanswered question, and he had to decide how he would confront the answer. Tomorrow, the lines would blur irreversibly. The moment to face his demons had come, and the stakes had never been higher. The night pressed against Jack as he made his way home, the darkness intermingling with the torrent of thoughts racing through his head. Each step felt heavy with consequence, and the weight of his potential choices settled uneasily on his shoulders. He glanced up at the stars, momentarily searching for guidance in their quiet glow. Yet, the constellations offered no answers, only stark reminders of how vast his uncertainties loomed. As he entered his apartment, the familiarity of the space offered little comfort. Jack had poured himself into crafting a refuge here, surrounding himself with reminders of his ambitions and aspirations. Walls adorned with framed accolades and diplomas bore witness to his journey, yet their presence felt increasingly hollow. The achievements that once fueled his determination now seemed like relics of someone who had yet to confront the reckoning of his heart. He sunk into the couch, staring blankly at the muted television screen, the flickering images bouncing off the walls like the ghosts of unmade decisions. He remembered Sarah's impassioned pleas, her unwavering commitment to their cause. She had woven a tapestry of hope that now felt frayed at the edges. Could he really abandon her, and everything they had built together? Could he allow the allure of power to drown out his moral compass? A sudden ringing broke the silence. His phone lit up with Sarah's name. He hesitated before answering, a swell of apprehension momentarily paralyzing him. What if she could see through his facade? What if she questioned his wavering resolve? Taking a deep breath, he answered, his voice steadier than he felt. Hey Sarah. Jack, I was just thinking about you. Did you meet with Derek? Her voice was a melody of concern and curiosity. Yeah, I did, he replied, weighing how much to reveal. It's complicated. Complicated how? Her tone sharpened, an edge of urgency sparking through the line. You've been quiet since all this began. You can't let them pull you back into something you don't want. Jack ran a hand through his hair, frustration mixing with admiration for her relentless advocacy for what was right. It's not about what I want anymore, Sarah. It's about what could be. Think of the resources we could access, the change we could make from the inside. Silence lingered, stretching like a taut wire between them. But at what cost, Jack? You're talking about selling out. You might save a few people, but could you live with the sacrifices? I believe in this mission. I believe in us. A pang rushed through him, a painful reminder of the stakes at play. He hadn't considered how much his decision would affect her. I know, and I'm conflicted. I can't ignore the impact of what Derek S. offered. But what if it's a trap? Then you'll steer through it. Together, she said, her confidence igniting a flicker of resolve within him. No matter the wormhole they want you to jump into, you go in with a plan. That's your strength, Jack. You're not just going to become part of the machine. You'll figure out how to drive it. He leaned back against the couch, her words echoing in his mind. Just how long had he considered himself a victim of circumstance? What if he could maneuver through Derek's offer? Perhaps his past alliances could serve a purpose beyond allegiance. Perhaps he could indeed become a catalyst for reform. I'll think it through, he finally said, a determination surfacing that hadn't been there just hours before. But I won't let go of our mission. Promise. Good. Just remember, you're stronger than you think. Don't let the old ghosts shape your future. As he ended the call, Jack sat in silence, the weight of Sarah's faith in him anchoring his resolve. For the first time, the tangled threads of his past and present began to weave into a pattern he could discern. He understood now that facing Derek would not be a surrender. It would be his opportunity to reclaim his narrative, to rise from a past he never wanted to revisit and confront potential new alliances without losing himself. He would not be playing games. He would be executing a strategy for change. The new day would bring a confrontation that could expose the depths of his character. The thought quickened his pulse. Tomorrow's meeting with Derek would test him in ways he hadn't anticipated. Would he emerge as the change agent he aspired to be? Or would the past draw him back into its clutches? The tension of uncertainty hung like fog in the air, thickening around him. No longer could he delay the inevitable. And just as the dawn would break, so too would his resolve to take control of his destiny. He stood, a decision forming in the pit of his stomach. He would not merely face tomorrow. He would face the man he once was and embrace the man he was meant to be. Tomorrow, the battle for his identity would commence, and the stakes had never been higher. Morning light spilled through Jack's window, awakening him to a world that felt somehow both new and familiar. He rubbed the sleep from his eyes, trying to shake off the lingering remnants of his dreams. They had been riddled with uncertainty, and the shadows of doubt hovered at the corners of his mind like unwanted visitors. But today, those shadows would meet the light of determination. He prepared for the meeting, each movement deliberate and thoughtful. The act of choosing his clothes felt like a small victory. He opted for a tailored navy suit, one that projected both professionalism and an underlying confidence. Gazing at his reflection, he tried to embody the man Sarah believed he could be, the man he wanted to be, and yet, beneath the polished exterior, his heartbeat echoed the unsteady rhythms of a heart still grappling with his past. Stepping out into the day, Jack was immediately engulfed in the throbbing pulse of city life. The cacophony of honking horns and hurrying crowds served as reminders that the world moved onward regardless of his turmoil. He welcomed the chaos as a distraction from his drifting thoughts, channeling every ounce of his motivation toward the upcoming confrontation. To the office, tension crackled in the air, palpable and electric. Jack's colleagues shifted around him, their chatter lost in the haze of his preoccupation. The weight of their expectations sat heavy on his shoulders, as he envisioned them looking to him for answers he was still calculating. They trusted him. Looking into each face, he could almost hear their unspoken belief. Will he lead us into new heights, or will he falter in the face of his own ambition? As he reached his office, he took a moment to breathe, centering himself in the stillness that surrounded him. Jack closed his eyes, visualizing success. The plan Sarah had insisted he develop now felt more like a manifesto than a strategy. It was time to lay out a vision that merged his goals with an ethical stance. He could play Derek's game by his own rules. Time slipped away, and before he knew it, he was on his way to the conference room. The sudden stop and breath he took before entering almost paralyzed him. What if he was entering a den of sharks, where motivations masked as camaraderie could ensnare him? The thought fizzled into a flicker of resolve. As he pushed the door open, the room bore little resemblance to the battleground he envisioned. Derek sat at the head of the table, exuding confidence and calm. Around him, stakeholders waited, their faces a mixture of interest and apprehension. Jack swallowed hard, feeling the scrutiny that awaited him. As the discussions began, Jack listened intently, weighing each word, each sentiment shared. Derek's proposed initiatives brimmed with promise-enhancing resources, expanding influence, but Jack could feel the underlying current. The allure of success was enwrapped in a seductive distortion. It carried the potential to transcend principles. A decision loomed on the horizon, clearer than ever. Jack envisioned turning those corporate resources and powers into tools for transformation, not merely for the sake of profit, but for a larger vision that aligned with both personal and collective morals. Could he wield this opportunity to engineer real change? With every point of conversation opening, he asked himself, how do I fit into this puzzle? With Sarah's words resonating in his mind, he took a calculated risk during the discussions, presenting alternatives that softened Derek's hard-lined proposals. Jack proposed collaborative pathways, securing ethical considerations in the planning processes, his heart pounding with the weight of his words. When Derek raised an eyebrow in skepticism, Jack felt a surge of determination rising within him, compelling him to push further. It was an internal tug-of-war, a back and forth within Jack was intensifying, testing the strength of his resolve. Would he remain true to himself, or would he slip into the role of another faceless executive, piloting the interests of those with dubious motives? As the meeting drew to a close, an unexpected turn left his heart racing. Could he truly change the course of their dialogue? Would his ideas take root, green shoots emerging amidst the hardened corporate soil? Jack stepped out of the room, breathless and energized. The echoes of his voice lingered in the air, carrying the weight of the challenge he faced. Between wanting the power he once sought and the mission he could not abandon, the world outside seemed resurgent, with the clear implication that the choices ahead would not only define his career but also solidify who he would become. He turned back, feeling a shifting clarity. In that moment he understood the stakes. The question stayed with him: was this rebellion against the past just the beginning? He headed toward his office, pulse quickening with anticipation, and the thought loomed larger. What if this was not only about corporate alliances, but also about the personal revolution he yearned to ignite within himself? Jack's heart raced as he returned to his office, the adrenaline of the meeting igniting a fire within him. Every step was heavy with mixed emotions, a blend of exhilaration and doubt. Had he truly made an impactful statement, or had he simply stirred the pot without solidifying any support? This crucial moment felt like a compass, pointing him toward a path he wasn't entirely prepared to navigate. Sitting at his desk, he allowed himself a moment to reflect. The weight of responsibility pressed on his chest. The conversations he initiated required follow-through, yet his mind flickered back to the sharp skepticism in Derek's gaze. For a fleeting second, he questioned if he had acted too boldly, challenging the status quo without a solid alliance. Could he truly be the catalyst for change, or was he just an idealist aiming for stars too high? Spending hours scrolling through the day's emails felt futile. His thoughts were too jumbled, awareness of Derek's influence nagging at him. Jack had always been adept at sensing the undercurrents of the corporate environment. The mantra of survival of the fittest was imbued in every interaction. Wasn't he that what corporate culture demanded? Still, a voice in him whispered for a different approach, tugging at his conscience, longing for ethical integrity amidst the dog-eat-dog reality. During the late afternoon, he decided to take a short walk, hoping the crisp air would clear his mind. He made his way to a nearby park, his eyes drifting over the faces of strangers, each entwined in their own stories of struggle and success. Was he truly that different? Wasn't he just one more executive in a long line of people driven by ambition? As he strolled, he came across a small fountain where people gathered, children laughing effortlessly. It brought him back to his roots, a time when dreams were not entangled with conditions. The simple joys felt distant now, hidden under layers of corporate maneuvers. Jack took a seat on a bench, the gentle rustle of leaves surrounding him offering a momentary respite. He thought of Sarah's unwavering support, her belief in his potential to weave ethics into the fabric of their work. But even that belief felt like a burden now. Could he carry not just her hopes but his own aspirations while resisting the gravitational pull of Derek's influence? With the sun dipping low, painting the horizon in hues of orange and pink, clarity began to seep into his consciousness. He pondered the next steps he could take, concrete actions rather than rhetorical flourishes. Drawing a deep breath, he realized that it wasn't just about defending his ideals against powerful adversaries like Derek. It was about building a coalition of like-minded allies, of presenting a united front that would force change where whispered dissent had previously failed. Ideas began swirling in his mind. He envisioned forming small discussion groups within the company's safe spaces where employees could share thoughts uninhibited by hierarchy. Jack could become the architect of a supportive network, one that would amplify voices not usually heard. This thought sparked a surge of motivation, his past insecurities momentarily banished by a vision of purposeful collaboration. As he made his way back to the office, Jack felt a new weight lift from his shoulders, a revitalization akin to rebirth. The meeting had birthed something within him, and this personal revolution was just the beginning. He needed more than just ideas. He needed to act. He reached his office, anticipation tinged with an unfamiliar feeling, courage. Rather than simply responding to Derek's upcoming proposals, he would sharpen his vision and assertively shape the narrative from within. In doing so, he could effectively ask the pivotal question: what do we stand for? But even as he gathered his thoughts, uncertainty flared once more. Who within the organization could he trust to echo his aspirations? He felt the weight of the impending conversations ahead, each relating to the profound choices he would soon lay out. The groundwork was only starting to take form, yet the stakes had never been higher. Would he possess the strength to confront Derek directly? As the query loomed larger in his mind, he felt the walls around his convictions begin to close in empire building versus ethical stewardship. The battle lines were clear. The moment for decisive action was approaching, and he knew the time had come to face it all head-on. With every beat of his heart echoing past doubts, he prepared for what lay ahead. Could he summon the strength to stand firm against potential retribution? In that charged silence, the answer eluded him, leaving him questioning what he truly stood for above all else. The next morning, the atmosphere in the office pulsed with anticipatory tension. Jack's usual routine felt different. He was navigating a new awareness about his role in the company. As he prepared for a meeting with a few department heads, he wrestled with the delicate balance between inspiration and urgency. Each voice that joined the conversation would either propel him forward or reel him back into complacency. He spent the morning drafting his proposal for the new discussion groups. Clarity emerged from the chaos of his thoughts. Jack meticulously outlined objectives: fostering open communication, creating an inclusive environment, and empowering employees to share diverse perspectives. With every bullet point, he felt the specter of Derek loom large in his mind. Did he have the manpower and the courage to withstand inevitable pushback? As he approached the meeting room, he found himself questioning the decisions that had led him here. What if the others were too aligned with Derek's vision? Would they dismiss his ideas as naive? He took a deep breath, pushed the door open, and walked into the room. The participants, 3 middle managers and an HR representative, settled into their seats. The air hung heavy with expectation. "Thanks for making the time to meet." His voice felt steadier than he anticipated. "I'd like to discuss a new initiative aimed at enhancing our workplace culture." They listened, initially with polite nods, but as Jack laid out his vision, he sensed their skepticism wafting back. Hesitance masked as interest transformed into tense silence as he concluded. This is about fostering an environment where everyone feels their voice matters. We need allies. A long pause followed. Eyes darted around the room, tracking the shifts in energy. Finally, Laura, the HR representative, leaned forward. Jack, we understand the importance of collaboration, but this is a significant shift in how we operate. It could ruffle some feathers, especially with Derek's current agenda driving our initiatives. His heart sank momentarily. The distant echo of Derek's influence was palpable. I'm aware of the risks, Laura. It's necessary to evolve beyond ruffled feathers what we're doing isn't sustainable. A murmur of disagreement rippled through the group. Each voiced hesitance a reminder of the entrenched corporate culture. Jack's pulse quickened. He couldn't backpedal now. Let us not forget the talent and ideas we might be suppressing. We know there are employees who want change. We need to tap into those voices before we lose them forever. The uncertainty shifted slightly. He glimpsed an opening. If we expose this idea to a wider audience, we may discover allies we didn't know existed. We can stand against the complacency that's taken root under Derek's reign. Murmurs transformed to whispers. Jack felt a swell of ferocity. I'm asking you to help me lead this initiative. We have to become the architects of our workplace culture rather than remain passive observers. Who's with me? To his surprise, Laura raised her hand. I've had similar thoughts. We need to address the disengagement I've noticed during employee surveys. Gradually, support began to crystallize. One by one, the others leaned in, echoing hesitations that merged with their desire for positive change. The shift wasn't complete, but for the first time, he felt a flicker of hope rise in the room, a collective acknowledgement of a path he envisioned. Yet as the meeting drew to a close, unease crept back. The taste of victory felt bittersweet. How would Derek respond once he caught wind of this initiative? Would he seek to crush it? A cold shiver rippled down Jack's spine as he navigated through a wave of doubt. Just as they were assembling actionable steps, the meeting adjourned, he caught Laura's eye. Be careful, Jack. We're stepping into dangerous territory. Once you poke the bear, you know what might follow. Her words drummed heavily in his mind as he left the meeting room. The path to transformation seemed both exhilarating and perilous. Was he ready to confront Derek? The spiraling doubts returned, screeching inside him. What would he discover about himself when the showdown inevitable came? The very foundations of his principles lay precariously on the edge. His heart raced as he contemplated the confrontation that awaited him. Determined, Jack resolved to steel himself for what lay ahead. This was not just about professional change. It was about personal metamorphosis. And with every ounce of resolve swelling within him, he knew the next step had to be taken with intention. The time to prepare for the imminent storm had arrived. In the following days, Jack's sense of purpose crystallized into a fierce determination. Each morning, he entered the office with renewed intent, keenly aware that every interaction held the weight of potential change. The initial wave of support from his meeting kept him energized, but lurking just beneath that excitement was the pervasive shadow of Derek, who now felt like an ever-looming storm cloud. Jack focused on building alliances within the company, seeking out colleagues who had expressed discontent during informal conversations or in the anonymity of employee surveys. He discovered a small group of like-minded individuals who shared Laura's sentiments. They met after hours in a cozy cafe, piecing together their experiences, brainstorming solutions, and empowering each other to voice their concerns. These discussions only stoked his fire, revealing hidden motivations within himself that had long been dormant. As he prepared his next pitch to Derek, one that would either bolster his position or flame out spectacularly, Jack began to understand that this was as much about confronting Derek as it was about confronting himself. Would he remain the passive participant in Derek's regime, or would he stand firm and advocate for the changes he believed in? This internal battle intensified with each passing day. Jack practiced his speech in front of the bathroom mirror, focusing on his delivery, wanting his confidence to shine through. Each rehearsal chipped away at the self-doubt that had clung to him. Yet, as significant as his preparations felt, He often escaped to the rooftop during lunch, where the wind refreshingly tugged at his conscience, a reminder of the world beyond the suffocating walls of the office. The significance of his metamorphosis became evident when Laura approached him with a confidant's urgency. "Jack, I overheard Derek discussing new initiatives. He's livid about your proposals. We need to be cautious." Her warning sent a ripple of fear through him, but it also ignited his fighting spirit. This was more than just about a program. This was an existential fight against complacency. Encouraged by unexpected support, Jack started drafting a strategy to present his ideas to Derek, knowing well that this might ignite a flame fight. He valued loyalty but realized that unwavering allegiance to an outdated system was detrimental to the entire organization. The narrow escape from mediocrity felt vital as the day of the presentation approached. Jack's emotions shifted overnight. What was originally fear transformed into determination. He envisioned himself as an agitator of progress, prepared to challenge the status quo and articulate the necessity of his initiative. When the moment finally came, standing before Derek, the tension surged palpably through the room. He felt a rush of adrenaline course through him as he opened the discussion with a clear, steady voice. "Derek, I've been working closely with some of our team to better understand our workplace environment. My findings and proposed initiatives could help revitalize our company culture." Derek's eyes narrowed skeptically as he leaned back in his chair. "And you think we need to change? I can assure you, everything is running smoothly." The dismissive edge of his tone stung, but Jack persisted, urging himself to press on against the tightening grip of doubt. "Yes, but at what cost? We are losing engagement, and if we don't adapt, we risk stagnation. We cannot afford to lose our talented individuals to an uninspired environment." "Let me show you the data," Jack insisted, feeling the instinctual tug of self-preservation. But Derek's reputation for ruthlessness danced in the back of Jack's mind. Every instinct screamed for him to withdraw, to step back into the safety of his previous role. Suddenly, he understood this was no longer a simple professional disagreement. It was a crossroads of his ethical beliefs and personal growth. Jack cracked open the door to change, and he knew he might have to walk through it come what may. Would he emerge with the respect he yearned for, or would he feel the force of Derek's retaliation? Jack's heart thundered with anxiety as he awaited Derek's response, fully aware that bravery was not simply about facing opposition, but about standing firm in one's convictions. The moment of truth loomed, and behind the heat of potential victory lay the chilling shadow of failure. Would this be his undoing or the catalyst for the transformation he so desperately sought? The pause hung in the air like a thick fog, every second stretching into an eternity. Jack's eyes remained locked on Derek, the weight of his words resonating in the small conference room. He felt the urge to fidget, to retreat into silence, but this was not the time for weakness. He clenched his hands into fists, steadying himself against the enchanting pull of self-doubt that threatened to disrupt his momentum. Derek's narrowed gaze bore into Jack, searching for cracks in his resolve. "You make bold claims without any regard for operational stability." He sneered, his voice cold and calculated. "What's the evidence to support this engagement crisis you speak of?" Jack swallowed hard, the brief taste of bile in his throat signifying the precarious edge he teetered on. The decision to stand his ground was as much about his future as it was about the future of his colleagues. "The data from our last employee satisfaction survey indicates a significant decline in morale over the past year. If we don't address these feelings of disengagement, we risk not just losing talent, but also the hard-earned trust between management and our teams. Emotion doesn't drive results, Jack." Derek leaned forward, his finger tapping against the table in emphasis. "Numbers and productivity do. Get with the program or you'll be left behind." Jack felt the heat of the challenge pulse through him. Behind Derek's dismissive exterior was the probing fear of losing authority. He took a deep breath, aware of the stakes now towering walls around him. The idea that his arguments might just be rooted in personal vendetta against Derek felt like a betrayal of the clearer truth. He was fighting for in that moment. Jack acknowledged the tumult of emotions swirling within him. Fear and empowerment walked a razor-thin line. "And where does that leave your team, Derek?" His voice held steady, reinforced by a sudden surge of clarity. If productivity is prioritized over employee well-being, you're building a foundation on quicksand. Look at the turnover. Our best people are leaving. The room fell silent. Jack's heart raced, not just from the tension but from the realization of his own conviction. Here lay a self-assertion that he had never fully embraced. This wasn't merely about defending a proposal, but about advocating for a fundamental shift in corporate ethos. Derek's eyes widened slightly, revealing a flicker of uncertainty that made Jack's pulse quicken. Sensing the shift, he pressed forward. I know change is uncomfortable, but if we rather ignore the problem than confront it, we're dooming ourselves. We need to pivot towards a more inclusive model, one that values every individual's contributions, not just your bottom line. For a fleeting moment, Jack glimpsed the possibility that the meeting could spiral in his favor. Yet, lurking just below the surface was the reality that Derek could easily shut him down. After all, he was not only his boss but a man whose very reputation thrived on exerting dominance. Derek leaned back, arching an eyebrow. You certainly have a flair for dramatics. But I'm still unconvinced, Jack. You have one chance left to sway me. I won't tolerate disruption for the sake of unfounded arguments. A silvery thread of doubt snaked through Jack's mind, urging him to reconsider the path he had stepped onto. Was he truly ready to put everything on the line? To risk his job for a cause that felt innately right yet precariously unproven? The choice lingered there, tantalizing and terrifying all at once. I'm prepared to present more than just claims, Jack replied, his determination solidifying into resolve. I want to build a proposal that incorporates employee feedback in a way that aligns with our goals. I can prove this works if you let me. He could almost hear the gears clicking into place, battling with Derek's calculated skepticism. And yet, something deeper tugged at Jack. Was this truly the moment he would reclaim his agency? Derek's gaze chilled as they locked eyes, and Jack knew the impending clash could define his trajectory within the company. The clock continued its relentless ticking. Would he find a way to stand tall, or would the repercussions shatter both his ambition and resolve? The fate of Jack's aspirations, as well as his principles, teetered on a knife's edge as he braced for Derek's inevitable response. The tension inside the conference room bubbled at the surface, alive and electric as Jack stared directly at Derek's unyielding expression. This moment was pivotal. The battle for his identity and the future of his company had come to a head. Pulses raced, breaths quickened, but Jack stood resolute, the weight of his convictions bolstering his stance. Jack, you must understand. Derek's tone shifted slightly, hinting at irritation. You want to create a participative workspace, but change must also ensure productivity remains paramount. Your so-called engagement strategies could result in a loss of the very efficiency we've built. Jack felt a surge of energy pulse through him, Herculean resolve fueling his counterargument. What is efficiency without heart? He challenged, voice steady yet passionate. Productivity can thrive only when employees feel valued, which we've seen reflected in the declining turnover rates. This isn't an unfounded claim. It's a reality we're facing. How can we ignore the pain points if we're to remain competitive in the long term? Derek narrowed his eyes, the atmosphere thick with a charged silence. Was he swayed, even an inch? Jack forged ahead. Let me lead a pilot program, a small initiative catering to an inclusive workplace through employee-led brainstorming sessions. Jack's voice gained confidence. Together, we can align engagement with our strategic objectives. Let us redefine productivity by integrating meaningful contributions. If you're willing to explore this, I promise I will demonstrate the potential for immense rewards. Derek's hard exterior seemed to crack, if only temporarily, and Jack seized the moment. We owe it to ourselves to reevaluate and recalibrate. This situation is not simply an issue of disagreement. It goes beyond. It reflects our potential future. Jack, Derek interrupted, weighing his words. Your passion is commendable, but understand what you're asking. It's not merely about wanting, it's about consequences and commitment. I'm committed to driving this company forward, Jack declared, emotional clarity underlining his speech. But we can't do it at the expense of our people's voices. If I'm called to stand against the tide of complacency, then I choose to fight and I'll gather support from my team. The tension in the room shifted, sparking to life. Jack's heart pounded not just from fear, but exhilaration. For the first time, he felt he was truly leading, embracing vulnerability while standing firmly on the path of integrity. In this moment, he was not just a CEO, he was a champion for change. Derek's expression shifted slowly from skepticism to reluctant acknowledgement. Fine. You have the data? Jack's eyes lit up with hope. Everything would hang in balance on this next moment. I'll present it along with testimonials. This will be a collaboration, Derek. Trust me. The long silence that followed felt like an unraveling wave of relief. Jack stepped back into the light of possibility, exchanging glances with his colleagues earlier flooded with hesitation. He understood now. He turned a chapter, extinguished the fog of indecision that blurred his path. As Derek leaned back, a slight smirk crossed his face, a glimmer of intrigue perhaps. You've made your case. Prepare your presentation. But know this, he said sternly, you need to deliver results. I will, Jack promised, his voice steady as he felt the weight of support around him. Emerging from that room, Jack had crossed a significant threshold. No longer bound by the chains of bureaucratic fears, he stood armed with a vision aimed toward impactful change. He sought to empower employees to voice their own ideas, to craft a workplace dynamic cultivated around mutual respect and collaboration. With a clearer perspective, Jack reached out to Sarah, fervently excited to share the progress. Their mission would not only evolve but flourish. I've got the backing, Sarah. Our pilot program gets the green light. He breathed into the phone, his heart racing at the thought of their joint ambition taking root. Jack, that's incredible. What are the next steps? Echoing the clarity of purpose now founded on solid confidence, he detailed the forthcoming employee meetings where they would gather insights and resources. This isn't just about corporate restructuring. It's about changing lives, starting with the people we work with. In the following weeks, they implemented initiatives that fostered transparency and open communication. Michelle, Laura, and other supporters rallied around him, removing previous shadows of doubt. They led brainstorming sessions, creating dialogues amid employees from various departments that encouraged innovation blossomed. By structuring the program around shared input, they nurtured an environment that transformed once muted voices into catalysts for change. And when the first indications of improvement surfaced, employee satisfaction metrics reflecting upward trends, Jack saw the energy bubble through his presence. He had climbed from the constraining structure of complacency into the light of empowering action and affirmation. Ultimately, this transformation bore fruit far beyond the walls of the office. Victory echoed in recognition from higher-stakes investors and peers. The tides were shifting, and people were paying attention. Jack had crafted an environment rich with opportunity and growth, one where innovation no longer stood alone but thrived through shared purpose. Holding firm through adversity fostered his own journey from isolation towards fulfillment, building a legacy rooted in empathy, initiative, and genuine connection. In Sarah's eyes, he saw respect mirrored back, her appreciation and acknowledgement of their own transformative journey propelling onwards. Jack Thompson emerged not just as a resolute leader. He became a person committed to integrity and change. The triumph he felt was tangible, every ounce of hard-fought evolution echoing exhilarating possibility. Jack had proven to himself and those around him that true success lies in aligning one's ambitions with the human spirit, ultimately reclaiming not just his conviction, but his very identity. Now, as the warmth of collaboration enveloped his office, the foundation of a new era, the fruits of his labor flourished, and he stood ready to tackle whatever challenges awaited. This resolution marked not the end, but the awakening of a legacy that knew no bounds. Act now. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.